Welcome, everybody. Please give a warm welcome to Chris and Sandeep. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Let me know. They will be talking about their journey of creating their startup FoodHaven. And if you're looking for inspiration in putting your ideas into action, this is a great speech for you. So take it away, Chris and Sandeep.
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen. And can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Chris, and I am the CEO and founder of FoodHaven, which is an online platform that connects people to restaurants that are selling surplus food at discounted prices. So I was actually a former student at SF State, and I graduated in 2014. During my time there, I worked in the restaurant industry and saw a ton of food go to waste. Most of it was perfectly good and nutritious. At the same time, I also saw a lot of my fellow classmates suffering from varying degrees of food insecurity. And so taking that concept with me into grad school, I wanted to figure out a way to solve that problem by providing an affordable means of eating out, while also at the same time putting money back in the hands of businesses. So in my grad school days, I worked on a number of different social entrepreneurship projects. And after I graduated, I felt that I needed to join a company where I can generate that social impact. And instead of joining that company, I ended up founding one myself. So since then, in 2020, I set off to recruit the team to build the product. And then early last year, we decided to start beta testing. And currently we have 40 restaurants on board and 2,000 downloads and a total headcount for our firm of 10 people. So that should give you guys a rough flavor of my background and some context in the company. And the next is Sandeep.
Hey guys, I'm Sandeep, the CTO at FoodHaven. I have been with FoodHaven almost since the beginning of the company. I met Chris when I started out as a developer with the company, and then when the position opened up for the CTO, I took the lead. I completed my graduation at San Jose State University, and then I started working with Amazon recently. That's a little bit about me.
Okay. And so a lot of people ask me, what exactly does a CEO do? People say, all they do is delegate and hold meetings. And if they do that, that would actually be a very bad CEO. Leaders should always be leading by example, in my opinion, and they should be able to go into the trenches with their teammates and work on projects. They really need to be able to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty. And with that, a lot of people say, well, I hear CEOs are supposed to be doing everything. And while it's true in a startup environment that people do wear many different hats, a CEO cannot possibly be doing everything. If that's possible, then that would be incredible. And frankly, they wouldn't really need a team to support the business. However, as the saying goes, greater is the person who can get 10 people to do their jobs than the person who can do the jobs of 10 people. So the first responsibility of a CEO is building the team. You need to be able to recruit talented people who are motivated to work for you based on the mission of the company. Pretend you're working on a class project and you get to choose who you want in your group. Now expand that thought to a company, and it's pretty much the same thing. The people you are recruiting are going to be setting the tone for how fast or slow your company grows. Also, since you'll be working with them a lot, you better make sure these are people you can trust and share the same values as you. Also, as CEO, you need to be able to create an overall business plan based on the resources required in both capital and time. Oftentimes, you'll see resources mismanaged and not allocated to the right places. So it's imperative that you try to make everything as efficient as possible by determining the distribution of those resources and responsibilities. So you need to be able to create a performance-driven day-to-day culture. It's built on a set of universally accepted behaviors and norms that are encouraged by leaders and facilitated by creating process. These will help employees work as effectively as possible to achieve goals and create value. And of course, for a CEO, one of the main responsibilities is also motivating the team. You need to be charismatic. And the way you do that is also fostering a sense of intellectual curiosity. Not punishing failure, but being understanding and empathetic. You need to set clear goals, and you need to be able to let the people who are the masters of their business unit determine how the course of that business unit functions. If you're micromanaging them and you're always controlling them and forcing them how to work or think of things, you're not getting a diversity of perspectives and opinions. Also, of course, you need to establish the overarching culture of the company. Things like being transparent and communication is a really big table stakes, in my opinion. You need to be inclusive, going back to fostering that sense of diversity of opinion and perspectives, and also collaborative. You know, if there's other people on the team who aren't as strong as you in a certain subject, you need to be able to teach them and guide them along in their journey to learning and becoming better employees and coworkers. And so just to double click on building a team, what exactly do people look for when they're building their team, whether it's in a startup or in a corporate company culture? What do you look for? And for me, I personally look for above average intelligence. If you're going to be adding someone to your team who has a range of different responsibilities, you want this person to be smarter than the average bear. You want this person to know something that you don't, because at the same time, this person will also potentially be teaching you a few things as well. Also, this person needs to be able to have great soft skills. They need to be able to persuade. This person should be somewhat informal and actually have hobbies and day-to-day activities that they participate in outside of work. When you ask what do you do for your free time, they need to be able to tell you what they do. And if they don't, it'd be really difficult for you to draw that connection with them. And that could actually make working with them quite challenging, since there's not a deep connection and you have nothing to relate to them with. Another thing is a giant work ethic. Of course, everyone wants someone who's disciplined and hardworking, someone who goes out of their way to complete tasks, and going above and beyond is really important. Sometimes emergencies will happen, and inevitably people can't fulfill some objectives. And if that work is shouldered to someone else, people need to step up. And if people aren't willing to step up, then ultimately there are product delays, and there's also bigger business plan delays. So you need someone who can actually work hard to get things done. And of course, you want a value match with you and the organization. This person, whoever you're recruiting, needs to actually be getting something out of this just as much as you are. Aside from compensation, they need to actually be learning new things and growing as a person, whether it's in terms of skill set or even career. There needs to be something that they're getting out of it just as much as you are, since, of course, they'll be contributing to the development of the company itself. The next is Sandeep.
So I want to talk about what do CTOs in a startup do, and then what makes people good software engineers. So starting with what do CTOs do in a startup. So when you're CTO of a startup, most probably you might be the only tech person in the company. So you are the you are the sole person responsible for growing the team, hiring that, building by hiring the correct people. So that hiring might be from your when it starts out, it might mostly be from your friend circle, your network, your fellow students. That might be the case. And then as a tech leader of the company, you are responsible for setting the technical direction of where the company goes, what technical stack to use, what not to use. You are the person taking those decisions for the team, analyzing the trade-offs. Trade-offs is the word that I want to put an emphasis on here. You have to take the technical decisions that are the best for the company for that particular period of time. Let's say there might be a problem and there might be some 10 solutions for the same problem you're facing. But you should be wise enough to choose which is the correct solution for that particular period of time, even though it might be wrong later down the road at a different point of time. And then when you're in a small startup as small as ours, CTO might be the only person responsible for building out a minimum viable product, or we call it as MVP, which can be launched into the market, test our idea, analyze the results, and then that would be the starting point to build the correct product. And then as a CTO, you are solely responsible for every phase of the software development lifecycle in a startup, starting from gathering requirements, refining them into features, designing them technically, develop those features, and then test them and deploy it to live. And then when we talk about testing, there's no special QA team when you're in a startup. So you are the only person responsible for testing, finding out bugs, and then fixing them as well. And then what makes a good software engineer? Particularly when you're in the field of developing a software, you're most probably dealing with logic. So what makes a good software engineer is the ability and skill to solve a problem analytically with proper reasoning. And also, as Chris rightly said, a good software engineer, or in fact any good employee, are the ones that are that have great work ethic and are willing to put in the amount of work required to complete the certain task. It might be few hours, it might be few days, it might be few weeks. You should have the great work ethic. You should have the work ethic to stand up and put your hands down and get your hands dirty and complete the task as and when required. And then when you're a software engineer, as a software engineer, even that applies to me too, we get too focused on writing code and the technical aspect of it. But what makes a good software engineer is the ability to think and understand the 360 degrees aspect to why, what, and how of coding. Why are we writing that particular piece of code? What are the impacts to the end customer when you write that particular piece of code? How this piece of code will affect the product? How this piece of code would be affecting the lives of customers? These are the things you need to understand in order to make you a good software engineer. And then software development or software engineering in particularly when you're starting out as a new grad is mainly about willingness to learn more. You're prone to make mistakes when we are starting out, but you should be having character to embrace those mistakes, learn from them, and grow yourselves into the career. I read it somewhere, but I don't exactly recall it. It's always about learn fast, fail fast, fix fast. That's what I believe in. That's what I tell my team to believe in. Thanks, and then
happy to take any questions. Yeah.
I got one question. By the way, is my voice coming through okay? Does my microphone work well?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, good. So I wanted to ask about kind of building a strong team and looking for people with above average intelligence. Would you say that that's more like skill related, problem solving, critical thinking type of intelligence, or more like substantive expertise in a specific field like development or marketing?
So that's a good question. You should always, of course, be testing and recruiting people based on how relevant it is to the role specifically, but also you need to be looking for, I guess, traits that aren't normally come to light besides just, hard skills. So what I'm talking about is, if someone is the expert in the room at marketing, for example, they can be really good and they can say that they know everything about there is for marketing. However, if new problems or challenges get thrown at them and they're not able to deal with ambiguity, which often happens in a startup environment, then that could actually lead to a lot of bigger problems down the road. And so there's certain aspects to a person that you should be looking for that are actually redeeming qualities. Maybe someone isn't the expert in marketing. However, their problem solving skills are quite high and they're willing to do whatever it takes to learn and grow. If you have someone who is really experienced, but is arrogant and isn't willing to take new perspectives to things, then that could be problematic for the reasons I just said. And so, yeah, obviously you want the most qualified people in terms of their experience and expertise, but at the same time, you want people who have other attributes that would be really desired for a company.
The goals. Okay, that makes sense to me.
I have, oh, you can go.
No, you can go first, actually, if you want to just say something.
Oh, no, I can wait. You can go first.
Here's two questions I have to ask you. So you're like Christopher, you're pretty much a CEO of your own company, right?
Correct.
So I want to ask you, like, one of the first question is like, so how do you know who to look for? Like, how do you do that? Like, how do you kind of like figure out like how you know who's like has more higher knowledge than you do? Like, because you're for instance, you might have people working for you right now that have more knowledge than you do or a little smarter than you, right? Correct on that assumption?
Correct. Yeah. So with the CEO, you should know a little bit about everything, enough to be dangerous. But of course, you're not going to be a master of everything. I mean, there's some CEOs who are really good at go-to-market, which is sales and marketing, and that's fine. And then there's other CEOs who come up the financial track because they're really good at forecasting. So every CEO will have a certain strength that they play into, but they should be notionally aware of the other business functions. And so when you're setting off to recruit, your team, you want people who are going to be smarter than you at that specific function. For example, I have a CFO who's really great at financial forecasting and can provide much more new perspectives to things than I ever could. And then the same goes for Sandeep here. I mean, I'm actually the weakest on the technical piece. And when I asked Sandeep what he knew, I think his profile actually stood out because he also displayed a hardworking ethic. And that was one of the things that I thought that was relevant. And he also illuminated me on what we should be looking for in app development. Maybe we need to be coding the mobile platform in React Native because of these X, Y, and Z benefits.
Okay.
And so I think that hopefully answers your question.
Yeah. And the second question is this. This is probably not a lot of people would ask you this, but when you started your company, did you find some kind of investor that wanted to invest your company? Well, for many reasons. For one, did you like to not be able to take all the risks? Because let's say, for instance, your company fails, right? So did you borrow from SoftBank? Did you borrow from let's say money from Y Combinator? Did you somehow convince them in some way to be like, hey, I want to invest your company, and they start you off with some amount of money?
Yeah, so for that, we bootstrapped, I think, 20K of my money. And
so your own money, you wanted to take some risk with it yourself?
Yep. I think that where I'm at in my life right now, I felt that if I'm not taking a risk right now, then potentially later on down the road, I'm never going to take a risk at all because I'll be fine working in a company environment and I'll just get used to that. But when you're in a startup environment, and you just graduate, you're literally getting exposure to a range of different things. And you're learning more than you ever could growing up in the social ladder of a corporate company. And so when we set off to recruit the team to build the product, we thought, okay, well, we don't exactly have a lot of money, so we need to prove whether through traction or pitches that this idea is sound. And so you have to conduct surveys to assess whether or not there's a product market fit. And then from there, you can take that information and use that to pitch to investors. And every investor you're going to be talking to is always going to be asking for traction. And it's going to be really difficult to get traction when it's just an idea. And so that's why it's important for anyone who's starting a company to bootstrap to some degree. And then after that, use whatever traction you get to pitch to get more money. Eventually, we actually did do a pitch competition in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and we actually won $50,000 because we had enough traction to prove that there is something there and there is a business case. So I think that answers your question.
I'm sorry about that. That was my phone. So, but yeah. All right. But thank you so much about that.
Problem.
I had a question from private message. They asked, how would you deal with employees that work against the grain but perform? Do you keep them or not?
Yes, you do keep them. And what the challenge that you're getting at from there is a misalignment in terms of I guess company culture. I'm not sure if it's company culture, but it could be an establishment of personal relationships. And so when that happens is you need to have multiple meetings with them to understand their perspectives. And then beyond that, it really helps to have company social gatherings to kind of break down those barriers. If someone goes against the grain, it's totally fine to have different perspectives. But if it's actually rubbing you the wrong way in terms of behavior and attitude, then that's a different kind of conversation. So what's really important is to make sure that you need to understand where they're coming from, and they need to understand your perspective as well. If there's not a mutual understanding, then that could actually create conflict down the road, and actually ruin personal relationships as well.
Thank you for sharing. And I had one more. If anyone had any more questions, feel free to jump in or send in the chat. But what are some like myths about starting your own startup that you believe that isn't true, or that it like you have like you can debunk some of the myths for starting a startup?
People think that the majority of your money will be going to just product development and just straight up like sales. But I disagree. I think people don't take into account the legal fees that are associated with setting up the company, and then beyond that, establishing certain contracts, like a terms of use agreement, a privacy policy, things like that. I would say that I think 25% of our costs have been attributed to legal fees, and that happens in the background. And you think that, all I have to do is focus on, functional business stuff. But at the same time, you're forced to also look into how you can create these contracts, and you have to work with a lawyer. And it's sometimes just better to do your own research and become an amateur expert in crafting legal agreements just to save some money. And so I think that's something that's happened in the background that people don't take into account. Beyond that, also, the sheer time it takes and devotion is another thing that people kind of underestimate. If you are thinking about an idea and it leaves your head after like a week, then I don't really feel like someone is really devoted to that startup. If you can't stop thinking about that idea for a startup night and day, in the hour, after work, at the park, then I feel like that's something that you're truly passionate about. And I think that that's what really sets successful startups away from other startups.
I just have a point to add to what Chris said. And then this is not more of a myth, this is more of an understanding thing. Many people think that when you set up a company, you would be getting returns within like returns instantly, but then it takes so much longer to make it count, make it to a successful business which has a proper revenue stream.
Thank you for sharing. We can take maybe one or two more questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Another one. Just kind of curiously, what's y'all's favorite way of engaging with other startups? Like, how do y'all tap into the startup community, maybe an alumni network or like local meetups?
So there's plenty of incubators and accelerators out there that you can apply for, and they'll provide a lot of resources such as mentorship and even credits to use like Amazon Web Service hosting services. So just tapping into those networks and just looking at like online, like where would be an incubation program nearest to you, that would be great. Also, most universities have some sort of startup program on campus as well. I know Berkeley has a really big one actually called Berkeley Skydeck that you can actually apply for. And then beyond that, when you're connecting with other startups, if you have an idea yourself that you are passionate about, then connecting with another company in a similar space would be really easy to do via LinkedIn. I do this all the time where I see a company that could be a competitor or adjacent to mine, and I just reach out to them on LinkedIn and I say, hey, like, do you want to talk? My name's Chris. I introduce myself, and then I say, I really like this aspect of your company. I'd be really curious to learn more. If you have 20 minutes to carve out on your calendar next week, I'd love to just get some insights from you. From that, some people say no, other people are willing to have that conversation. And then from there, you can actually establish some sort of connection and learn from them. So beyond just infrastructure at university campuses and in the cities, there's also just straight up cold calling or sending messages on LinkedIn to people who are really inspiring to your idea.
I had a question. I was wondering, how do you find your motivation or passion again Because I'd imagine maybe creating a startup or being a part of a startup, you go through so much being knocked down or like failure or something. So how do you find it back in yourself to keep going or something else?
Good question. I constantly think of the future, and I think of like the end result and what I'm hoping to achieve out of it. Beyond that, as one of the leaders of the company, I think about all the other people who are working under me and reporting to me, and I feel an obligation that I can't let them down. And that's what kind of burns a fire in me to actually make sure that the company stays afloat and we're successful. And also, it's really nice to think about the end result when the company finally gets acquired and I can have some time to myself and to think. So that's my personal, what personally motivates me. Sandeep, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, like there not every day you feel the same motivation to work, but then when you think about why you started, like you go back and think, start to think why you started, like why have you started this particular thing, like let's say why have I taken up this CTO role, for example. That again brings back my motivation to the beginning. It resets. Okay, now I'm motivated, I can start working again. And then there's a question on
Thank you.
chat. How do you strike the balance between keeping the business afloat in the short term and add any long-term goals for growth and sustainability?
I mean, I would say that, we have a CFO that I work with that we do financial projections, and that kind of determines where we allocate resources. If you have just enough money to stay afloat for a short amount of time, then you might need to reconsider a lot of ways to start doing cost cutting in order to make sure that your business is growing. Because if you are cost cutting to the point where you don't have enough money to invest in spreading awareness via social media ads or flyers, then at that point your business is just hanging on by a thread. It's not really a real business. You need a certain amount of resources to grow. And if you're doing the bare minimum, then you need to reevaluate some things from there. Any other questions?
If there are no questions, could we all take a group photo? If you're comfortable sharing your face, please turn on your camera and we can take a nice group picture. I'll give you guys a few moments. Okay. Everybody ready? All right. Okay. I'm going to count to 3. And okay. Yeah, it's up to you if you want to open your camera. Okay. Yeah, I'll take care of that. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. And then we can do another one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for Chris and Sandeep for this wonderful presentation and answering the questions. Hope you guys have a wonderful day and we'll see you around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.